Chapter 1. Los Angeles. Outside a Starbucks. 17th of June, 2031.
Now that I find interesting.
Caitlin said in a sultry tone.
Please tell me more.
I smiled, eyeing the brunette. My pause resulted in her tapping the table impatiently. We sat outside the coffee shop, people watching. The busy crowd outside the railed fence drifted by while she focused solely on me. Basking in the early afternoon's rays, I took the opportunity to reflect. I started working at the library as a janitor, honest to God's truth, I said, and she winced. If I had to guess, the combination of me admitting that I was a janitor probably hit her as hard as mentioning God in California. A drone delivered our drinks, and I popped the top off mine, letting the rising steam waft a lovely scent of white chocolate my way. Call me old-fashioned, but when a lovely lady showed interest in me or picked up on the fact that I was interested in her, I asked them out on an actual date. I promised to get to the point you're so eager to hear. The library became my bastion, my refuge. I graduated high school, never quitting my part-time work. 2 years later, I finished my degree in computer systems and web design, I said with a distant stare, trying to remember the time fondly. A honking horn from the street resulted in a homeless man getting into a shouting match with the driver. The brief distraction allowed me to continue a moment later. So I found myself with a choice. Take a gig at a small malpractice corporate office or continue being a librarian's assistant. One earned a lot and the other pittance, and meant I'd have to get a master's degree in library science to lose the assistant title, I said with a sigh.
Yes, all great.
Caitlin said, edging herself over the table to lean closer to me.
What about your ex-girlfriends and current lovers? That was where you set the hook. Now reel me in.
The woman's seductive appearance held my attention. A diving neckline exposed ample soft flesh, and she caught me staring. She batted her eyelashes, as if she were some innocent girl. She pulled her hair back in a neat ponytail that she swirled and twirled around her fingers out of habit. Her hazel eyes sparkled mischievously, and I fidgeted under her intense gaze. The woman oozed sex appeal, and I felt outclassed. I've never had a girlfriend. 25 years old, and not once have I had a relationship long enough to call someone that. I had this talk with my parents before they passed, I said, about to launch into my routine for justifying no-strings sex. She interjected, laying a delicate hand on top of my forearm.
I'm so sorry. I'm sure they wish they were here to see the man you've grown into.
Life's fickle, and although I do miss them. My point is that relationships lead to disappointment when long-term fun leads to long-term problems. To me, it's like taking that job with the malpractice office. I'd be happy with the money, but I wouldn't want a career there. I could date a girl, but I don't want to get married, I admitted.
But you like the soft touch of a woman,
she asked bluntly. It was 2031, and ladies were more assertive and confident than ever. I had been asked for coffee or for my phone number by many beautiful women while at work. Being a handsome librarian's assistant certainly had its perks. In this case, Caitlin told me she was from Vegas. She was visiting a friend who'd mentioned that my looks and carefree fun attitude would make for a good catch during her trip to town. I caught on to the situation quickly and accepted the invitation, and now we were talking about sex. Yeah, I'm a young man who loves a fun tryst. Just not ready to settle down. That seems to be the kicker for a lot of my dates. I don't want you bringing a toothbrush over or asking why I didn't set my status to in a relationship. I said honestly with a half-hearted shrug. I always tried to make my intentions clear. I'd found that honesty was usually my most successful strategy.
Bree said you're not a player, but I can see how it comes off that way. Well, Damien, I'm a bit of an oddball myself. I'm a believer in Wicca,
Caitlin said.
Being a Wiccan tends to drive men off, sends them running for the hills.
Probably was best that I hadn't said God accepted my parents into heaven either. I didn't like to be preachy, but I didn't judge either. Okay, I said. As long as you don't try to convert me, I try to be understanding.
Oof, sheesh. This will sound bad, and I promise no converting or brainwashing, but I need a man for a ritual. To take some oaths over a decagon door,
Caitlin said with a cringe. Her sorrowful eyes relaxed from their squint and switched to a happy gaze with a big smile.
And then we can grab a drink at my hotel room. Yes, a drink. Sounds lovely.
She winked.
And by a drink, I mean we strip naked and do the kind of things to each other that require a shower. During or after.
She smirked. I frowned, eyeing the lovely woman in a whole new darkness. I popped my coffee's lid on and sipped the delightful drink. White chocolate and coffee. Divine. Sheet wrestling after a ritual with a Wiccan. Unique, and yet just another day in California. She bit her bottom lip, her bedroom eyes locking to mine as if willing me to capitulate. I struggled, fighting a sudden urge to agree, and I didn't know why. This ritual, I assume you believe it to be real? I asked, leaning back to watch her reaction. Caitlin adjusted her ponytail, showcasing her assets. The woman sure did know how to tease a man. Without missing a beat, she said,
I do. If successful, my ritual will send you to a new realm. Not sure what you'll arrive as, but to return, you'll need to achieve a whole lot of power. Power that also accrues to me if you succeed.
I snickered, trying not to laugh, lest I offend. Where's this ritual? How long is it? And what if it fails? I asked. Halloween, dark closets, scary movies, and rustling under the bed didn't spook me. Clowns, though. Those assholes were terrifying. But the supernatural always failed to feel real to me.
Look, I think you're cute and nice.
She fidgeted.
I feel awkward even asking. I'm staying at a Motel 6 that's only 20 minutes away. 10 minutes for the ritual, give or take. And if my Wiccan ritual fails, I'll reward you.
She admitted.
Honestly, I want to reward you anyway, but I do need the help first.
I eyed her speculatively. It was my day off, and honestly, this wasn't the oddest thing a woman had ever asked me to do. I shuddered, thinking of Tiffany and her toe fetish with baby dolls. A quick ritual and then that drink? I offered.
Perfect,
she said, scooting her seat back. A Tesla auto taxi picked us up from the curb a few minutes later. Like a pent-up lioness, she leaped on my lap as soon as the door closed. The robotic voice told Caitlin to stop kissing my neck in the back seat, spoiling the fun.
Ugh, I don't want to walk. I guess this is a good time to tell you about Norden,
Caitlin said, adjusting to sit beside me. The who the what now? I asked playfully.
An old tale. Do you like stories?
She asked. I slung an arm around her, nodding.
Norden was an expansive realm that became so boring. Humans were not much different than they were here during the Middle Ages. They lived, farmed, dug, fished, and toiled to put food on the table. All this was done with animals, grit, and determination.
Not an Earth story? I asked. She shook her head.
Hell's below, not in the slightest. This planet is in our universe and linked to Earth. Same orbit, same seasons. Different continents, different reasons. Norden was transformed by a horrific magic that coated the land in a deep mist. Following me so far?
I stared out at the traffic, seeing a driverless solar panel vehicle swerve to avoid a pothole. The city had never recovered after 3 years of quarantine. Everywhere my eyes shifted, they revealed depressing scenes of what had once been a great state. I gazed down at the shorter woman, noticing how little she cared about the poor at the side of the road, huddled in tents. Norden, not Earth, no electricity, bad magic, has humans, I summarized. Caitlin continued.
The mist soaked the land and consumed everything trapped in its grasp. Humans at higher elevations watched as their brethren vanished. The expected cries for help from those lost never reached the ears of those eager to lend aid. The great kings sent valiant knights into the magic to assess the situation, but to the last, they never returned. Even their horses disappeared into the magic.
So, the higher elevation kingdoms got a pass? I asked with a scoff. Caitlin smiled and said,
They did, and they did not. The spell was not that black and white, and for a full year, both worlds that were linked together suffered. And then, like that,
she snapped her fingers.
The magic vanished on the first anniversary.
My gaze returned out the window, the despair of Los Angeles sticking a stake in my heart. I used to love this town as a kid. These days, I dreamed of fanciful lands or read books to escape reality. Let me guess. Those caught in the mist became zombies? I queried, having seen a movie like this recently.
Better and worse than that, depending on whom you ask. Those caught by the spell ceased to exist on Norden. Their homes, tilled fields, and hard-won civilization all vanished with them. Some theorize that the monsters who now roam those territories are actually humans, but they're not. The Blighted are creatures swapped from an overfilled world to Norden.
Caitlin said. I grunted, growing tired of seeing the traffic. I focused on Caitlin and her Norden story. You've lost me. Some weird magic wiped out several human civilizations and replaced them with mythical creatures referred to as the Blighted?
Good, good. You're getting the picture in here,
Caitlin said, tapping my forehead.
Sometimes pretending is more important than seeing.
Yes, I do love a good book, even more than a good movie, I agreed.
Norden is special, and I hope you sense that from my tale. There are a few worlds where magicians can bind, alter, affect, and warp reality. Well, realities, really. In this case, a sorceress of untold power cast a spell across 2 worlds. She sent the humans on Norden to Ostrava, while Ostrava's mythical residents were sent to Norden, with a few alterations.
Caitlin said, the last bit sounding a bit ominous. Alterations? I asked.
A simple way to track the achievers from the useless. The competition rewards greatness. At its most basic, 2 sides compete for boons by killing each other. Simple, really, and built that way on purpose for all to understand.
Caitlin replied, her condescending tone making me feel like I was a 5th grader. Why? I asked. All good stories need a reason. We arrived outside a rather typical, vagrant-infested but cheap California motel. I suddenly was having second thoughts about helping Caitlin, but somehow found the courage to exit the vehicle. She was on vacation, and there were 1,000 cameras here. Hell, even the taxi had been recording us. Maybe this was the only hotel room she could afford. Yeah, that had to be it. Caitlin waggled a key with one hand, dragging me forward with the other.
The why is simple. The planets became stale and boring. Believe it or not, even as a Wiccan who believes in the goddess and the horned god, I know there are many gods. We each have our deities to serve.
She said this in a way that made it seem like it was common knowledge. The crunch of grit under my shoes changed to a squish. I refused to look down to see what I'd stepped in. The seedy motel disturbed me for a number of reasons. I may not be rich, but I liked to think I had standards. Caitlin led us under a second-floor walkway, comparing the scribble on her key to each door's numbers.
Basically, both worlds became embroiled in a war that pitted one against the other in a competition for dominance. Ostrava had hundreds of mighty species, while humanity had its strength in governments, swords, cavalry, and arrows. To increase the chaotic nature of the competition, the gods added magic to the mix.
Caitlin said. But why do you call it a competition? I asked. She gave me a teasing frown for my impatient interruption.
Both sides gather something called Zorda. By gather, I mean they cultivate it from those they kill. If you're an Ostravan minotaur, for example, and you kill a human, you gain their Zorda. Zorda is what gives the gods their power. The problem is, they cannot collect it themselves, and it must be given freely. If this minotaur is a champion of, say, Torbern the Fearless, and he achieves 10,000 Zorda, Torbern can trade the champion a wish for his Zorda.
Caitlin said, tossing her hand from side to side.
Within reason.
Can't Torbern just wish for Zorda? Solving the whole need for all this bloodletting? I asked.
Not how stories, gods, or real life work. Nothing in this universe is free. Even death has a cost. And trust me, we Wiccans know.
Caitlin said, and I paused as she unlocked the motel room door.
Yeah, that came out wrong.
She frowned.
I'm a 100-pound girl with fake tits. You're 6'3" and fit. I'm the one who should be worried about going into the roach-infested motel.
So, your story. This is what you believe you're doing this ritual for? I asked, curiously.
The skinny of it, yes,
she said, bouncing her eyebrows at me. She entered the room and I hesitated. You know, I don't believe in the supernatural, I said, staying outside the door.
I need to get down to my underwear, if that helps you find your recalcitrant courage,
she said with a snort. I gulped and stormed the breach like a hero. The second I entered the room, two things hit me hard. First off, Caitlin was clad only in a tiny thong, with a lacy bra that enhanced rather than covered a body so flawless I gawked. The next was that the bedsheets, mattress, and even box springs had been set against the wall. In the very center of the room was a 10-sided shape outlined with crow feathers. The decagon you mentioned. Interesting, I muttered, a bit in disbelief.
Close the door, please. I wasn't kidding.
She waved a key card for a Hilton room.
If the ritual doesn't work, which it probably won't since you don't believe in the supernatural, then we can leave the roaches behind, go to my room, and get busy. We can pop vacation champagne along with our drink. It was a very long journey to get here.
I glanced down at my phone. It was only 2 p.m, and I had no texts. I sent a random "I love you" to my mom's old cell number. The one she'd had before she died. Like always, no one replied. But it always made me feel better.
All right,
the gorgeous Wiccan instructed.
Strip down to your undies, and then sit cross-legged in the center of the decagon. Careful you don't shift any of the feathers. After that, I'm going to poke my finger until it wells a drop of blood. The blood goes on your lips or in your mouth. You pick,
she said. Just a drop? I asked.
Just the tip.
She teased and rolled her eyes.
Yes, a simple drop.
Lips are fine, I guess. I shrugged, stripping my clothes off and sitting carefully in the middle of the circle. Caitlin stuck a finger into her mouth and nicked it on a sharp tooth. When the blood touched my lips, I winced a bit. Can't say I was a huge fan of the iron taste.
Actually, finger in. Sorry,
she said, sliding her finger into my mouth. I wanted to protest, but she started to chant.
The Zorda is power, and power is life. The Zorda is power, and power is life. I bring a willing champion to gather me Zorda. Cultivate for me 10,000 Zorda, and I'll return your parents to the living. If you die, you fail. Don't you want to see your parents again?
Caitlin asked. I scoffed, about to get upset.
I mean no ill will. Just, if you could see your parents again, would you want to?
She asked, sweetly. I nodded a bit, placated by her amazing figure.
Great. Keep my finger in your mouth and repeat after me. Use your own name, though. I, Caitlin the Temptress.
She paused. I chuckled at her fake goddess name. I, Damien Wilheimer, I said. She continued.
Enter into a contract for Zorda. The champion will visit Norden and reap 10,000 Zorda in exchange for restoration of his parents from death. So I swear to the great creator.
I repeated the words after her, not certain if the great creator she was referring was God. I may have been distracted during this bit. My eyes had focused on her thigh gap, ensuring she didn't have a weapon hidden there, beyond her weaponized looks, which were deadly enough. Occasionally, my gaze raked up her lean abs to those supple breasts. When I forced my eyes higher, I noticed no malice in her gaze or in her motions. She didn't make any sudden movements or reach behind her where she might have stashed a weapon. My hands were free for me to defend myself the entire time. I wasn't scared of this woman. Did I find her ritual silly? Absolutely. But it was 2031 in California, and a beautiful half-naked woman was telling me some fantastic story, thinking she would gain god powers from some hokey ritual. Wasn't the craziest thing I'd heard this week. We're done? I asked. She nodded sadly.
Maybe you weren't the right man to be my champion. Sorry I offered to save your parents.
I don't think they would mind. Like I said, I'm not big into superstitions. I snorted. I almost wish your ritual would have worked. Norden sounds like fun. I lied.
You don't mean that, but I understand. I'll honor my word as a temptress. We'll share a drink and some hot tub fun with you in my penthouse.
I nodded eagerly.
A final question. If I could really bring your parents back, would you take my offer? I mean, really consider the offer,
she said, stressing the offer. I frowned, mulling over the proposal. How would that even work? I asked. Would they be younger than they should be, with missing memories? Or would I be in a different reality? Because everyone else would know they were dead, or this reality would be gone and I'd be me in a new body.
Nope, no,
she said, wagging a finger with one hand, her other hand on her hip. I became transfixed by her large jiggling breast that moved naturally. I shook my head, trying to focus. Even if she was quite the temptress.
I would set them up on an island resort, with a lot of cash and fake identities. When they adjust, I tell them the truth. Stay dead, or live as Mr. and Mrs. Smith,
Caitlin said. While I like this what-if game, I'm in a ritual involving crow feathers in my underwear, and I feel a goddess could just change our reality, I said.
Nope. Bringing them back would be a huge burden, and barely worth me earning 10,000 Zorda. But a goddess takes what she can get,
Caitlin said, firmly believing her words. I did like the temptress touch. Your boobs seem real, too, I said with a winning smile. She rolled her eyes.
They are. And yeah, I was Caitlin the Deviant in my earlier years. I prefer to keep things simple now. So how about it? If your parents had ample money and new identities in a small island resort community, would you be interested?
This was kind of fun, and I think I liked Caitlin for her zaniness. Her tempting body certainly helped win me over. I stood and said, Yeah, I would honor the ritual. I don't see how it would be possible, but... An aura flickered around her form, and the decagon below my feet flared orange. I furrowed my brows in confusion. What's going on? I asked.
Finally! That did the trick! Sit, hurry, or...
I spun, trying to flee. The hell with sitting. The decagon opened up in a swirling vortex, sucking my feet into the floor of the motel room. Inch by inch, the ritual ate my body. My grunting efforts to pull myself out achieved nothing. Caitlin stared down at me as her ritual circle brightened. The orange glow revealed the temptress's black wings and spiked tail. I screamed in rage, desperate to be free of the pull, not understanding what was happening. My hips sunk below the floor and the magic howled until it deafened me. I saw her lips move slowly.
Good luck.
With a massive tug, the ritual completed and I was yanked from the motel room into a void of darkness. My final, fleeting thought before the darkness swallowed me was that I no longer liked Caitlin the Temptress or her Wiccan ways.